I think we're finding in today's society that we actually need to fast, or we need to be sleep deprived for us to really feel those cues, because we have so much information coming at us, because we're so, it's like we work and then we'll jump on like Instagram or YouTube or, whatever it is, TikTok or whatever. And so our brains are just constantly like processing tons and tons of information. And we need time to pause for that to sync up, to really process information and experiences.
How's it, Jeff?
Hey there.
Good to see
How's it going?
All good, all good. So let me just give you a quick introduction before we kick off. This is our next Metaverse meetup for Singularity South Africa. And Dr. Jeff Karp is a biomedical engineer and a professor at MIT, Harvard Medical School, and Brigham and Women's Hospital, driven by a passion for helping people break free from routine and live more fully in the present moment. His own journey includes embracing ADHD and other learning differences that has shaped his unique perspective and fueled his dedication to empowering others. Jeff believes that we can all become conscious architects of our lives, actively choosing our thoughts and actions to rekindle the vibrant aliveness within. He challenges people to rediscover their innate curiosity and experience the world with renewed wonder, recognizing the profound interconnectedness of all beings. The philosophy is at the heart of his inspiring talks, which he interweaves personal accolades, scientific insights, and a deep reverence for spirituality. Jeff has, had an incredible career. He has led to some amazing breakthroughs around tissue glue for sealing holes in a beating heart, targeted therapies for diseases like osteoporosis and Crohn's disease, and smart needles that automatically stop at their target for safer drug delivery. He's created a nasal spray that neutralizes airborne pathogens, and his innovations have resulted in over 175 scientific publications, over 100 patents, and the founding of 14 companies. He is a fellow of the National Academy of Inventors and the author of LIT, Life Ignition Tools, a guide to energizing the brain and sparking creativity. And Jeff remains grounded and focused on his mission to inspire and uplift others. He believes that everyone has the potential to live a truly extraordinary life, and he's committed to sharing these tools and insights that can make it become a reality. And I must say that Jeff has inspired and changed my own life when I got to read LIT last year, and I've read it many times. So let's give a big jumping round of applause for Dr. Jeff Karp, everybody. You can jump there. Spacebar. Jeff, so thanks so much for joining us. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm doing really great. Yeah, no, thank you. In my camera, okay, there we go. I'm back on. I think I jumped my camera off or something. But I'm doing wonderful. Thank you so much. Yeah, so great to connect here, and thank you for the opportunity to engage like this. It's so cool, this metaverse. Really cool.
Welcome to the metaverse. This is the future of immersive learning, the next iteration of the internet, So Jeff, like maybe just if you can to start off, just to tell the audience what inspired you to create LIT, and how did your journey as a biomedical innovator lead to this framework for personal ignition?
Yeah, thank you for that question. So about 8 years ago, and a book agent from New York reached out to me, and she had read some of the articles about my research laboratory at Harvard Medical School at the Brigham and Women's Hospital, and how we turn to nature for inspiration. Sort of this idea that evolution is the best problem solver. And often when we get stuck in trying to create medical technologies, we'll engage nature and see, are there examples where evolution has driven certain problem-solving processes that can inform us of new ideas that we wouldn't otherwise think about. And so we do that a lot in my lab. We hit a lot of barriers, we hit a lot of walls. It's very emotional when that happens. But when we turn to nature, we're often able to find ideas that we can bring into the lab. And it's a way of intercepting our thinking, of sort of bringing in newness to projects. And so she said, "Hey, how would you like to write a book on the bio-inspired work that you're doing?" And I was really excited about it, but I know myself, pretty well. I'm still, I feel like it's like a lifelong journey, right, to get to know yourself. So still lots to uncover there. But I knew that I shouldn't say yes right away. That I should just wait a few days and think about it. And when I did that, it all of a sudden kind of my thoughts evolved, and I realized that there was something else that I wanted to write about. And that was how, when I was younger, I struggled a lot in elementary school with learning differences and ADHD. And my parents didn't know it. I didn't know it. My teacher certainly didn't know it. And I would just sit at the back of the class feeling completely demoralized, like an alien, like I didn't belong. Everyone seemed to get it. I wasn't getting it. I didn't understand how others could be getting it. And the second grade teacher actually wanted to hold me back to repeat the second grade. So it was really presenting, at that time. And what happened was I had this transformational experience in between the second and third grade, because my parents negotiated that if I spent the summer with tutors catching up, I could go on to the third grade. And during that summer, an interaction with a tutor actually led to me tapping into metacognition, thinking about thinking. And that just opened up my mind in incredible ways. And by the way, I feel like every child, every person is able to tap into it. And that allowed me to really channel my powers of observation around me, and really learn from what I was observing, how other people were acting and behaving, and what they were saying, and how they were responding. And then by trying that on, it was almost like I was kind of like a computer analogy. It was like I had hardware that I knew was good hardware, but the software wasn't working for me, and I needed to program my own software, essentially. And I did that by observing others and then trying it on. Did it work for me? Did it not work for me? Often it didn't. I would say things in the wrong situation, the wrong context, and got in trouble a lot. I was in the principal's office many times. Actually, the vice principal. Actually made it to the principal's office a handful of times, and mostly the vice principal. They're the ones who handled the delinquent children. But what happened was I eventually started, through this accessing metacognition, thinking about thinking, I was able to develop tools, and through the support of my parents and some teachers, a handful of teachers along the way, these tools I used to survive, and then eventually I used them to thrive, and then brought them into my laboratory. And so that's really how LIT kind of came about. The tools didn't come out of my research lab, but they came out of the lab of my own life.
Just incredible. Yeah, it's so amazing that just by thinking, you've got so much power inside you, within us. There's just so much, it's the answers to everything, or, the ability to solve any problem, or to heal ourselves, or, there's just such immense energy within ourselves.
There's such a force there, and it's incredible. Yeah, it's like I feel like, we could talk the whole time about just that, because it's like when we focus our attention on something, when we focus our thinking, there just happens to be, there's almost like this matrix that unfolds in our minds, and we start making connections between things. So it's like the more we sort of bring our minds back to what we're really interested in thinking about, then we start to connect in the conversations that we have, in the podcasts we watch, or the other content that we consume, or the world around us. We start to get information that expands whatever we're thinking about, and not only expands, it evolves. And it's like, it's a force that we all can wield, and it's really a wonderful thing.
And how do people connect to this universal need? Like, how do we actually connect to these tools that will move like ideas into action?
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of different ways to connect with these tools. And I think one of the things to kind of consider is that we have very powerful biology that's working for us. Like everybody has incredible biology that's just working for us, but we're only using a tiny fraction of it. And I think that there's many reasons for this. I think the education system really narrows how we interact with the world, how we experience the world, how we cultivate questions, how we approach situations, how we respond to feelings or emotions, like all of these things. And to me, to access these tools, it ends up being really simple in the sense of there's so many moments, like every moment in our life is a moment to infuse intentionality, to infuse something that, to kind of discover something that could help us lead to a better path, or that can discover something that could illuminate our minds and really lead to the flow of these positive neurotransmitters that make us feel really great, or to deepen a connection with somebody else. And it's really sort of, a big part of it is just taking a couple moments each day, and it could be at any time in the day, to pause and to infuse intentional energy into something. So to change something, to intercept a little pattern or a habit. Like, I'll just give you one example, and this, maybe kind of sound like a silly example, but it actually really helps me, which is, I used to drink coffee. I actually switched to matcha, which is, green tea leaves, kind of ground up. And I just love it. It sort of, it sits better with me. I don't get the highs, the major highs and the major lows with it. But I really like sweetener, right? Like I really like to add some like stevia or a little bit of monk fruit or something to it. But what I do is once or twice a week, I leave it out. I purposely leave it out, even though I like it, right? And what happens is the first 2 or 3 sips, I notice that it's not there, but then it goes away. I don't notice it anymore. And it's like just intercepting that little pattern to me create some intentionality in my morning, which then allows me to build more intentionality into other areas of my life that day. And it's just, there's so many tiny little things that we can do like that, where we just intercept a tiny pattern, and it enables us to, it sort of like surprises our mind. And it's like a little bit of friction to do it, but you create these little small entry points. And then all of a sudden you start to develop awareness of all these patterns that don't serve you during the day. And you start to uncover deeper intention for what serves you and what excites you and what, helps you to lead more with curiosity and drive deeper connections with the people around you and deepen your everyday experiences.
Love it, yeah. That's the low activation energy you talk about. So, we're all stuck in these low activation energy states, these patterns of living, because our algorithms are just set to do the automatic thing. Like we would just automatically put the sweetener in the coffee or something. But it's having that intention to stop what you're doing. Do your actions with intention. What you say, and then it creates. Sorry.
Yeah, no. I feel like we're both like, oh my God, like so much to say. Yeah. I mean, that's also one of the things too that I'm working on is like, like trying to listen more and not like interrupt and not like, it's like so hard, but like it's definitely something that I'm evolving. But yeah, I mean, what you're saying, I mean, whoa, I just I have so many things to say on that, which is like, it's like recognizing that we all have, or let's say a lot of us have this primitive wiring that, because we were hunters and gatherers for tens of thousands of years, and evolution is, in human sort of lifespan terms, is a fairly slow process. And so, it takes thousands of years to evolve, into different, wiring and different sort of patterns. I mean, there's certain patterns we can wire quickly, and there's certain patterns that take a lot longer time. And one of the patterns I think that takes a longer time to which will happen over thousands of years, is that we gravitated towards a low energy state, both our brains and our bodies, because it was like, you could imagine if we're nomads, we're like kind of, traveling the globe, and if we, it wouldn't make sense to go for a run, for example, right? Because you want to conserve your energy in case something is chasing you, or if you have to move to a place with more resources. Like, it was all about energy conservation. The same with our brains, right? We only have a certain amount of energy in a day, and you want to be alert and available to respond to your environment to survive. And so when you start to recognize that we're wired to gravitate towards having habits, when you have a habit, it actually generally the energy to get to the habit is higher, but then once you're in the habit, it's lower. You're able to do things like, for example, let's say if I'm going to go do a speech and I memorize it, it's really hard to memorize it. But once I've memorized it, I can get up on the stage and give it and think about different things as I'm delivering it, right? Because it's like I'm in this lower energy state. It's the same like when you play a video game, for example. Like, it's really hard initially to get past the first level, but once you get past it, you can make it to the second level almost every time, right? And you can have conversations as you're going through the first level, right? So it's like that kind of a thing. Our brain likes to lock things in and then go to this low energy. But the problem is that actually, well, it's helpful and it allows us to do more things, it also holds us back, because when we're in a low energy state, our brains are not fully activated. We're not fully necessarily like alert and responsive, to what's happening around us. And I think that, the other problem is that there's $1 trillion spent on marketing and advertising every year to hijack our attention, right? So it's also like the more time we spend online, in particular, if we're in this low energy state, then we're susceptible to the messaging that we're receiving. And then we end up becoming, in some ways, just robots in society, because we're living other people's algorithms. And that's why I think we need tools and strategies to intercept.
Yeah, I mean, that's such an interesting point. It's like, in this world full of distraction, how do we actually identify what truly deserves our energy and our focus?
Yeah, I think, I mean, it's such a wonderful question. And I think that, I have this strong belief that we all have sort of inner guidance systems within us, right? And then also not just within us, but through our interactions with others. And so we're constantly getting cues from our minds, from our bodies, which are very intelligent, from our interactions with others. And these cues can alert us to tell us which patterns or habits that we're engaged in are not serving us, or can help guide us towards what actually does serve us. And, it's a type of thing where, a bunch of people find, for example, like fasting, or if you have like sleep deprivation, for example, you start to notice that your mind starts looping on certain things, right? Like, it's like you kind of have heightened awareness of the things that might be, present for you that don't serve you, or that are kind of troubling, or things that might sort of be uncovered that might lead you on a path that is the path you really want to be on. And so I think the challenge is that I think we're finding in today's society that we actually need to fast, or we need to be sleep deprived, or we need to have something happen for us to really feel those cues, because we have so much information coming at us, because we're so like engaged in it's like we work and then we'll jump on like Instagram or YouTube or, whatever it is, TikTok or whatever. And so our brains are just constantly like processing tons and tons of information. And we're kind of only aware often of what's in our conscious minds, but our subconscious minds are just being flooded with information. And we need time to pause for that to sync up, to really process information and experiences. And we also need time to pause to be open to the cue. So I think, to me, that's how we sort of uncover the paths that can be most fulfilling to us and really have the deepest experiences in life.
It's like it's almost. I think in the book you talk about these clarity filters. That having these filters of clarity to be able to recognize. How to remove the noise from our thinking.
Yeah. I know I think that, one of the ways, like, just what's kind of jumping into my mind is not too far from where I live is where Henry David Thoreau lived. And, he was,
Oh,
and this was
wow.
going back like, I don't know, like 100 years ago, or, whatever it was, 150 years ago or so. And what he did is, so he was in society, and he was feeling sort of subjected to the societal norms, the pressures of society to think a certain way, to act a certain way, to vote a certain way, to everything really. And he just felt that kind of very crushing, and he couldn't really. It was almost like there was so much noise, and this was without cell phones or without the digital kind of domain. So it still existed, like 150 years ago, and far back as well. And what he did is he went to Walden Pond. So it's this pond, and he practiced a number of things. Where, like, one, for example, was he did these nature walks every day, and he practiced self-sufficiency. So he tried to cultivate his own like fruits and vegetables, and he journaled. And he practiced solitude. He did interact with some other people, but often he was alone, thinking. And it was through these practices that, and he wrote extensively about it. He says that he was able to really connect with what was most important to him. He was able to connect with his sort of core values and really deeply get in touch with them. And then he left Walden Pond after a couple of years for what he describes for the same reasons that he initially went there, which was, he was ready to go back into society now that he had evolved this deep connection with his values. And then what he did was he stopped paying his taxes to protest the Mexican-US war and also slavery, and they put him in jail. And so it's sort of like this example of someone who was able to take steps to connect with their values and then go back into the system that had been sort of, contracting his mind and his way of being. But he was so connected, he was able to stand firmly and say, and sort of protest by not paying his taxes and end up going into jail. And I feel like we don't need to go to a pond for 2 years to get that. We can actually do, I'm here to say, like we can do that in the society that we exist, but we need tools and strategies and rituals and practices to engage to help us to reconnect with our values and to connect with these incredible aspects of the life force that are within us, like our curiosity and our creativity and our capacity to connect deeply with the world around us and with ourselves and each other.
Amazing! Wow. Was one of his quotes? If we are what we repeatedly do, then excellence is not an act but a habit. Was that him?
I think that might be him. Yeah. I wish I could confirm that on the spot, but usually I'd be like ChatGPT or one of these things like right away. But we could. I'm sure that'll be in the Metaverse soon, right? It'll just like they'll be like fact checking as we're speaking. Yeah.
While exactly. Live AI agent fact checking coming soon.
Yeah.
And so you speak a lot about these energy rituals. Do you want to maybe just explain a little bit more what they are and how can people use them to overcome burnout or creative blocks? How do people actually engage with energy rituals?
Yeah, I think I think a lot about energy, and I think one way to kind of frame it is that we can think of like the energy from the sun just as an example, right? And that energy kind of hits the earth, and then we have the power of photosynthesis, right? So the plants, and then we have the animals that are eating the plants, and other animals are eating other animals. And there's a lot of, so we have this energy transfer happening, but then we also have the energy transfer of when we communicate with other people, when we interact with other people, when we, even engage our own minds, that we can generate, we can sort of shift energy around, right? Like, for example, like, you tell a joke and people laugh, like that's energy transfer, right? Or if you say something that inspires somebody, like that's energy transfer, right? Very powerful energy transfer. Or if we're persistent and we're able to achieve something that can be really helpful and meaningful, that sets a really inspiring example that then others really resonates with other people, and they say, oh, and now that's possible. I wonder what I could do. So it's like having mentors that have done, have achieved certain things. It sort of expands the realm of possibilities, and then you're able to then channel your energy to achieve that. I think there's so many ways that we can sort of think about, and I just love thinking about energy transfer, because I just think it's such a kind of grounds us as well in the natural world, because we can look around us outside and just see the energy being transferred. Even right now in Boston, it's springtime, and just like a week ago, there was no, the trees were just had the buds on them, right? And now they're bursting out everywhere, and the scenery is completely changing. And again, that's the energy is just flowing around us. And I think that one way that I like to think about energy, in the context of, let's say, my work, the work in the laboratory, is that I feel like I just see everybody I interact with as having just incredible energy. And it's sort of like, when I think of my laboratory, I think, okay, how can I create the conditions in my laboratory for people to come and to just release their energy in incredible ways and share the energy. And I think when you create an environment that's conducive for people to lead with curiosity, for people to cultivate their question asking, right? Questions, I think, are one of the best technologies that we have as humans. And when you start to ask questions, you're actually transferring energy between people, right? You're creating. Exactly. Yeah. So so I think when we create these environments for people to ask questions and transfer energy, and for people to lead with curiosity and tap into their passions, and almost like creating a canvas for people to sort of bring their gifts and to cultivate them, and to light them up with fire, just amazing things start to happen. And, I feel like I've tried different strategies before in my lab, more of a micromanaging thing early on. And I realized that the way the magic really happens when you create the conditions for maximal energy exchange, and for people to just flow and connect with each other, and try to minimize the number of roadblocks. So the other thing I try to do in my lab is to I have a lot of affiliations. In Boston, you need at least 2 affiliations for people to take you seriously. So I have 5, and I see that as also that maximizes the energy flow, because now people have access to all these core facilities, and it's easy to then collaborate with researchers at multiple institutions because of these affiliations. So it's allowing the energy to just flow, and minimize any sort of impediments to that flow.
Love it, yeah. And the way you talk about how that energy grows, that energy sparks and ignites momentum and continues to evolve, the idea or the mission.
Absolutely.
Do you want to maybe share a little bit how you use these methods when creating one of your inventions, like the syringe? Sorry, how do you say it? The leak syringe, the syringe that doesn't leak, and why you did that?
Yeah, I mean, we've developed a number of, actually, I mean, that project, there's been, multiple, a whole evolution of needles and syringes that we have been developing. And I mean, it's a great example actually of energy transfer. I mean, that project started actually when I was a postdoc at MIT, in Bob Langer's lab. And what happened was, I was in the lunchroom, and there was an anesthesiologist there, Omid Farakazad, and he went up to he was just like, everyone, I just have an idea. There's epidural anesthesia. So, when a woman is giving birth, often they'll get a needle that goes into the epidural space to give the pain medication. So it's a more pleasant experience. And it actually, getting that needle to the right location is really challenging. And there are complications that can arise. And so, he had this anesthesiologist had an idea for a needle. And so what happened is that there were people chatting, but like an hour went by and it was just him and I left in the room, and I was just so excited about this problem. I had never developed any needle before, it wasn't in my tool set, toolkit. And we chatted. And then I went home that night and I was just thinking to myself, like, okay, there's something here. I'm really excited about it. I don't have the skills to do this, right? And so there was real opportunity for this energy to just fizzle and go away. And so what I did is I said, okay, well, who has the skills? Who has the toolkit to develop this kind of a needle? And I started looking around MIT and around Boston, and I found somebody who had developed like relevant like probes, and I reached out and I said, hey, this anesthesiologist and I have this idea and we've been working on it. Can we meet? And he's like, sure. So we meet up, and then, long story short, we applied for funding, we got a grant, we developed a needle, published a paper on it. That led to another grant, which led to another needle where we tried to do, it was a different application. And then that led to another grant. And then eventually we developed a needle that could, and the application actually evolved as well. And we developed a needle that could stop in between the layers of the eye to deliver gene therapy to the back of the eye. As a potential treatment for macular degeneration. It's really hard to get drugs to the back of the eye, but you need them there for diseases like macular degeneration. And so now we started a company. The company was acquired by a public company, and now they're moving that technology into a clinical trial. So it really was, I think it's example of energy transfer through bringing somebody in, like just recognizing that there's so many possibilities around us. And if we just bring someone in, the right sort of phenotype, someone who has the skills and is excited, then you can actually almost like wield the energy around us to achieve things that you would never be able to achieve alone.
Amazing. Yeah. And how long was that period of that? How long has that been going on for?
Yeah, that took a number of years because we had, there were like 3 iterations of the needle, and we were developing essentially auto stop needles. And the first idea actually came from a problem experienced in oil drilling for oil. Actually, there's like an interesting sort of challenge that occurs, and we built a needle based on a concept in the oil drilling industry. Just someone on the team had that idea, and we were like, whoa, and it actually ended up working. And then the next iteration was sort of a more simplified, looked more like a real syringe needle. And then the next iteration. So, I mean, that took a few years. It was probably, I don't know, maybe like 5 or 6 years for that kind of progression to take place, to get to the point where we had a needle that we felt could really address a big problem.
Awesome. Yeah. And I mean, a lot of the attendees here are either business owners or creators, entrepreneurs, innovators. How can they try? Firstly, they must get the book, must go read Lit. But how can they turn, use Lit to help turn their great ideas into lasting momentum and to big energy transfers?
Yeah. I think there's a lot of ways to do it. I think there's a lot of challenges that we encounter as humans, along the way, and it really requires kind of a holistic approach. I think, one, and we talk a lot about this these days, is really even just like, self-care is actually a big part of it. And I think we can't really emphasize that enough. And just this idea that, the more that we move and sort of commit to moving our bodies and flooding our brains with positive neurotransmitters, that is so important, because to me, it's how we can maximize our creativity and really have the energy. Like it's almost like counterintuitive that we like expand energy to get more energy. But to me, that's like a big part of it is to really commit to that. And, the aspect of sleep and diet and, all these things, right, are really important. And then that creates like the stamina and the energy and the just the means to be able to tap into this incredible biology that we have. And then I think there's the other things are, one is often, it's hard to be persistent for long periods of time. And that really requires, developing ways, I think what I like to refer to as like falling in love with practice, right? And so often we equate persistence with boredom, with plateaus, with, just sort of finding ways to push ourselves to do things that we really don't want to do, right? And I think one of the tricks is, how do we be persistent in a way where we actually fall in love with being persistent, right? And I think that, to me, one of the ways we do that is we infuse creativity into the process that we're engaging, that, the persistent process. So, one of the people, so I actually interviewed 40 people for the book, including Nobel Prize winners and Olympic medalists and social justice leaders and indigenous leader. One of the people I interviewed was the 6 times U.S. memory champion in the United States. And the way it works is he has like a deck of cards, and they mix it up, and then he has to look through the cards as quickly as possible. He looks through the cards, and then he has to repeat every card in order, and he has the fastest time, to do that. And so I said, his name is Nelson Dellis. And I said, Nelson, that's gotta get bored. You gotta get bored at some time, right? Like, you're constantly carrying around these cards and doing it. And, he even took them up Mount Everest when he was hiking, and he was able to get this incredible record in the death zone, where the oxygen level's so low that you can't survive there. But what he said is that what he does is he'll insert an extra card or two every now and then. Like, he'll actually change the deck in a way that startles his brain, right? And engages this kind of like startle effect, and that will make it more interesting for him. So there's all sorts of ways that we can sort of step back and develop awareness of the processes we're engaging to complete our tasks or to achieve certain goals. And then we can think about how might we change those up in a way to make it so because our brains love the novelty, right? And so when we get bored, or when we find things monotonous, or we find we're hitting a plateau, it usually means we're not infusing our processes with enough novelty. And so I think that's another way that we can, really maximize our chance of being innovative. But there's so many other things I could speak about, but just maybe I'll pause there.
No, that's incredible. I think I'm gonna use that. That's amazing, because and actually to this morning I do a lot of bar class. I do the same bar class every day, and they actually said to me, we gave you a big shout out on the weekend because I'm so persistent. I keep coming back.
Nice.
But just one, I'm going to ask, we're going to open up for questions now for anyone who wants to. You can write in the chat or go to one of the blue circles and unmute yourself if you've got any questions for Jeff. But in the meantime, I just want to quickly ask you, Jeff, with all of this incredible advancements in AI and robotics and these exponential technologies that are coming, what's really exciting you for the future? What are you excited about for the next 5 to 10 years for humanity, for our lives, and this new tech transformation we're about to experience?
Yeah, well, thank you for that question. One thing that's really front and center in my mind is how, with all of this technology, we're becoming more and more disconnected from the natural world around us. We had a great conversation yesterday about some of the hikes that you and your colleagues and friends and family go on, and I think, to me, most people are not taking that time to go out into the natural world and to attune to the rhythms of life. And one of the areas that I'm really excited about, and I think needs actually more attention and more energy and more persistence and just more of everything, is how do we incorporate into the technologies that we're all creating ways to bring us back to the natural world, because that's where that's what really truly fuels us and enables us to align, like to be on a path towards maximizing wellness, and not just individual wellness, but wellness within our communities, within our companies, within our, societies, countries, and even, entire planet. And so how can we incorporate in, how can we develop technologies and maybe incorporate into the technologies ways to help us connect with the natural world? Because that's what, the data is just conclusive that when we go and spend time in nature, it lowers our heart rate, our blood pressure, our breathing rate. We have a general sense of wellness, well-being. We feel, part of something bigger than ourselves. And, we can experience awe and wonder, and that just activates our brains and floods our bodies with these positive neurotransmitters and other, things that just make us really come alive. And I think that's how we maximize longevity and not just longevity, but actually leading lives where we're just feeling deeply connected, right? And I just think one thing I just think so important to mention is that, like, in the United States, if you look, for example, the epidemics of obesity and loneliness and anxiety and sadness and, just disconnectedness it's like over half the people there's some serious, mental health or other ailment that is I think can be directly linked to the disconnectedness of our way of being. And so that's one of the things that I'm really excited to see and hopefully sort of take part in, is how can we really infuse the technologies that are being developed with ways to bring us back to the natural world, and really see ourselves as part of nature, working for nature. Everything in nature works for everything else, but humans have kind of, through human centricity, or human centric kind of way of being, we sort of see ourselves as working for ourselves. And I think it's like, how do we start to see ourselves more as working for everything else and our place in the natural world?
Beautiful. Yeah, I think as this technology is evolving, it's actually allowing us to be more human, or to understand humanity better. And we're going to have to, eventually, we all know it's inevitable, once we reach AGR or post AGR world, we're going to have to decouple a lot of our normal work processes from meaning, because the ARs and the robots are going to handle a lot of those tasks for us. So we're going to have to, it's going to give us more time to really spend more time with our loved ones, or, engage in more wellness sort of rituals.
Yeah.
So it's really, really exciting.
And by the way, and I'm here to say today, I mean, that everybody can experience awe and wonder in their own backyards. I mean, it's all there. It's right there. And I have a number of rituals and practices that I engage every day to do that. And these are not difficult. These are, simple, accessible ways that we can just notice the nuances around us. And it's like, if you look around where we exist in buildings, or, cars, like nothing's really changing, right? Like, it's like the paint on the walls, the floors, like not really much is changing. You go into nature, everything is changing at every moment. Like, it's just everything. And when you start to tap into that, it's like this incredible force that you're tapping into, because it's just, we're designed to feel connected and be connected, and to use our incredible powers of observation to tap into these nuances, and for that to actually light us up.
Yeah, so true. And so Jeff, let me ask you one final question. Is just, what's one ignition tool, if you could give somebody, for someone who's feeling stuck or uncertain right now, what would it be, and why?
Yeah. so many possibilities there. I mean, one that's just jumps into my mind is a tool that I like to refer to as Get Bothered. And it's really about, how we can tap into motivation, right? And to really be open to the cues that move us to act or to change something and to realize that we care. And one example is my laboratory used to be near MIT in Cambridge. And I had this opportunity after about 5 or 6 years of my lab being in that location to move to the Longwood medical area, which is where a lot of the hospitals are. And I didn't have to move because the lab was actually, I loved being near MIT. It was great, incredible space. But I thought about it and I was like, you know what, here we are developing medical technologies, and there was something about being at this kind of satellite location that I don't know, just kind of felt like a little bit off. So I thought deeply about it, and I realized that I needed to stay proximate. I needed to actually see patients every day, and then that would actually, motivate the work that we're doing. And so we moved into the hospital and moved from Cambridge to the Longwood medical area. And there's just something about, being in an environment where you're seeing the people, you're exposed to the problem daily that you're trying to address. And to me, that's something that can really help us to motivate, is to really think deeply about what is it that we're trying to do? What is it that we're trying to achieve? What is the value that we're trying to bring? And how can we fuel our motivation to maximize persistence to achieve that? And I think one of the ways is to connect as deeply as possible emotionally and, sort of in person if you can. I mean, it also can be, you potentially can find videos online that can help you connect more with that problem, like hearing patients speak about their challenges. And, I've had patients come into my office and explain what they are experiencing. And there's really nothing that compares to that in terms of creating a motivation to want to keep going and to keep trying new ways of moving, what we're doing forward.
Awesome. Incredible. Love that. I'm going to use that one as well. And I think we've got 2 people in the blue circles. If you want to come online, unmute yourself and you can ask some questions.
Okay, my question is to Jeff, that since energy can be transferred between individuals, I think it could be electronic and it could be in any other means. All right. So with the proliferation of technology, what safeguards would one suggest, Jeff, where we say, I need to consume social media information, although some of the data and insights could be interesting, but what if I get a bad vibe, which is probably energy coming from the author of the material that I'm consuming? How would one safeguard themselves from that type of energy from affecting one's space?
Wow. Yeah, wow. I love your question. I think that, I think part of that, and by the way, I mean, I'm just trying to, I mean, it's almost like I need to think more about that to have an answer that I feel, really could be helpful. But I think one thing is that the fact that you'd be tapping into that, I think, is really important, right? The fact that you're sort of tapping into these cues that are telling you that there's something about the author that just doesn't feel right. So I think having that awareness is really, really a great thing, because it means that you found a way to just be receptive, right? And then I think one of the ways to kind of safeguard that is to maybe to sit with it and process it, and to try to understand it, and try to maybe even think like how that may be impacting what you're reading through their work. And maybe there's other sources that you can use to engage and get similar sort of understanding, but maybe not. And I think that, yeah, part of the challenge is like, how do we engage that material, and find usefulness and connect it to things that we're doing that can further our process and further what we're trying to achieve without letting that weigh us down. And I think part of that also is just like self-care, right? Like really taking care of ourselves with getting enough sleep and eating well and exercising and movement, because I think when we do that, we have a greater capacity to engage others who and to sort of receive things that might not sit well with us, but we're able to so that it doesn't sort of swing us off center as much. We're able to stay more centered in our lives. So yeah, I mean, I'm just sort of brainstorming on the spot, but yeah, I think it's a really great question. And I feel like we should be having conversations about these types of questions with other people to get insights and ideas on how others might, kind of navigate this as well.
Awesome. Yeah. Thanks so much, Jeroboam, for that awesome question. And Brendan wrote also in the chat, Brendan Marseille, it's interesting how overcoming the onslaught of tech is by disconnecting from it. Totally. Yeah. Sometimes we need to disconnect to reconnect.
Yeah. And yeah, I think, my sense on that is that, I love technology. I feel like there's so many incredible use cases where it just can be so helpful for us, and can help us to actually become more creative, and can help us, like, even having a conversation with ChatGPT can further our ability of asking questions, and to, because all of us have been shamed at some point in our life for asking the stupid or the dumb question, right? And not only does that prevent us that creates hesitation from asking questions, but it also prevents an evolution of our question asking abilities and skills. And so having a conversation with ChatGPT, we can actually iterate our questions, right? Like we can cultivate curiosity. But at the same time, I think if we engage too much without sort of a strategy for disconnecting and connecting with, ourselves and the natural world, then we can start to go down a path where there's too much reliance, and we start to, suffer from these mental health challenges and, wellness issues. And I think that, to me, it's sort of like, what maybe there's something to say here is that it's like in companies, right? It's like, you have the CEO. Take the biggest companies on the planet, or, any company is, you have the CEO, but the CEO doesn't just go off and do their own thing. They actually have a board of directors, right? So, and the CEO is like often, highly accomplished, incredibly intelligent. They're totally tapping into their gifts, but yet the CEO quarterly, 4 times a year, is reporting to a board of directors. But if we take ourselves as individuals, who's our board of directors, right? In our own lives, like who are we interacting with that's helping to guide us? Who are our mentors? Who are our advisors in our own lives? Because here we are with $1 trillion in marketing and advertising every year to hijack our attentions, information coming at us from all angles, just so fast pace. Our conscious, subconscious mind being flooded with all sorts of pings and cues and knowledge. And it's sort of like, we need strategies, we need tools, we need rituals, we need practices, we need mentors, we need, people in our lives to help us, to guide us, to continue on a path that is really most true to us and most fulfilling, and can help ensure that we're having deepened experiences, and that we're continually tapping into our curiosity and our creativity. And so I just think that I just like to think about that, because it's like, to me, there's just a big contrast there, right? Like we have this in our companies, but why don't we have that for ourselves? And that's where I think tools like in Lit and other tools that are available are really helpful for us to have strategies and evolving strategies to navigate, this, the world and the world around us.
Incredible. Thanks so much, Jeff. We have run out of time, unfortunately, but really, just wanted to say from all of us, thank you so much for making it here today, all the way from Boston. And yeah, if people want to follow you, how can people track your progress or follow you on social, that sort of thing?
Yeah, you can go to my website, just my name, jeffkarp.com, Karp with a K. And there you can find information about Lit, the book, as well as my lab and the work that we're doing. And there's lots of information that's not in the book, as well as the different connections to where you can find me in social media. And I also have a newsletter that you could subscribe to as well. That I release about once a month, and include rituals and practices, things that I'm experimenting with to really to tap into all the things that we've talked about today.
Awesome. Thanks so much for that. And everybody, thank you so much for joining. We are going to be taking a break in May. We're going to be launching the Singularity South Africa Summit 2025 on the 14th of May. I'm also going to be having a little baby boy soon.
Wow, I didn't know that.
May, yeah. So May is going to be quite a energy-filled, amazing month, and we'll be coming back in June with some more Metaverse meetups as we continue the build-up to the Singularity Summit, and hope you all have a great day or morning or evening wherever you are. Make sure to subscribe for more on Exponential Africa or on the podcasts, Exponential Africa, and we will see you in June. Once again, let's give a big jumping round of applause for Jeff. Thank you so much, Jeff.
Thank you. We jump too. I can't resist.
Me also. There we go. My camera's off. But thanks, everybody. If you haven't taken part in the quiz, please go check it out, and we'll see you on the next one. Cheers, Jeff. Thanks so much.
Hey, thank you. Yeah, no, thank you for the great opportunity. I loved our conversation.